Hey everyone, Matt and Dan here with Some Kind of Monkeys. We've got a special guest today. We're here with Dan Lucen, co-founder of the Midwest Gaming Classic. If you haven't heard of it, he's here to tell us all about it. So I guess start off with the basic, what is it?
Sure. It's April 12th and 13th at the Brookfield Sheraton, which is actually where we are right now, although I can't really tell. It's 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. on Saturday, 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Sunday. $30 Saturday, $15 Sunday. You can buy a combo ticket online for $40, get a lapel pin and a window cling when you do, well, technically when you get to the show after you have. Sunday's also Family Day. Kids 10 and under get in free both days, but for Family Day, we've got a lot of family activities going on that are kind of special for that day. There's a Mario and Luigi birthday bash where the kids can meet like the brothers. That's and cool. There's like coloring activities, there's a crafting activity, there's a lot of kind of different stuff for kids to do on the Sunday. And then on Saturday, of course, it's just all show all the time. It's kind of the busier day, but it's you get to play basically as many games as you can and the time that you're here and see everything that there is to see.
All for that $30, eh?
Oh yeah,
pretty good price.
Yeah, when you come into the door, everything, with the exception of there's some tournaments that are paid tournaments, but for the most part everything's free. So like we'll have an arcade hall upstairs that we'll have, right now I think that we've confirmed about 200 machines. I'm guessing that we'll have probably 250 or even more by the time of the show, at least I hope. And everything that's in that hall, free. So you walk up to it, you want to play Starship Troopers pinball, press the start button, you can play. So there'll be a console arcade, or I should say console museum. Console museum has about, I think it's about 100 different consoles in it. They go from the Atari 2600, well actually I should say they go from Atari Pong all the way up until like the PS4. And so you can saddle up to whatever and play something that's neat. I'm sorry, my phone just decided to buzz here.
We'll keep that in. It's fine.
Yeah. So you were mentioning tournaments. Can you elaborate on what kind of tournaments you're having?
Sure. We've got a few different types of tournaments that go on. There's a big pinball tournament, one of the biggest pinball tournaments, if not the biggest pinball tournament in Wisconsin. Takes place at the show. We usually have about 100, maybe even more than that, people compete in that a year. We also do one of the biggest Tetris tournaments in the nation. If you want to try your Tetris skill against other people, you play in some qualifying rounds and they kind of set you up for a bracket at the end. Do that. There's also a whole bunch of other games that you can play. And for instance, there's a thing that we call the Rush Cup. It's based on the Rush 2014 or the Rush San Francisco Rush series of games. Yeah. Although it's actually going to be played on Initial D, and so you'll get to play those games, and the top people get to face off against each other. We've got a room just next door that's going to have a Call of Duty tournament in it. We've got some tournaments Friday night too. There's one that's really unique called Up to Par. Up to Par is a tournament where you take and you play a choice of, I think that this year it's 6 video games. And based on your score, you get a golf score on it. So let's say that you play Pac-Man and you score 100,000 points or something. That means that you get a hole in one. And so you play those 6 different holes, and then there's a 7th tiebreaker. And so there might be 12 different games that are available. But yeah, based on how I play the 6 that I choose, and then the tiebreaker, I'll figure out where I'm ranked. There's also a pinball tournament like that Friday night. There's a ton of different stuff going on.
Is there entrance fees to the tournaments?
There are entrance fees to those tournaments. They range in price from like Up to Par and Clock Cast, which is the other pinball one that night, are $20 a piece. However, they do pay out almost 100% of their entry fees. We keep like 5%, which is basically a cost to take the money, and then a cost to make some of these certificates that we give out, and then everything else is given back to the players. So the top place in Clock Chaos, which there's usually about 60 people in, is something like a $600 payout.
That's pretty good. And the Call of Duty ones that Ghost you're playing this year?
Yeah, Call of Duty Ghost this year. We try to keep up with the newest one. Friday night is a team tournament, and then we actually have another one on Saturday that's individuals, and then on Sunday we usually do Halo. So we're working with some people to see if those are the same exact ones that we're going to do, but we know that we've got Call of Duty Ghosts.
Now which Halo one is that? Halo Anniversary?
Halo 4.
All right.
Is what we've been using.
Because the new one is Halo Anniversary.
So,
right?
True.
The important question for me is it the NES version of Tetris?
Well, this year actually we've gotten, and this isn't even up on the website yet, but we've got a new group that's sponsoring us called Hard Drop, and they're a like hardcore Tetris player group. And because of that, we're looking at doing multiple different versions of Tetris. Our main one has traditionally been played on the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. Nintendo for qualifying, Super Nintendo where there's a head-to-head mode for the finals. We're not 100% sure. We're still kind of working through the details on exactly what we're going to do with that. But what's neat is that we are probably going to run at least one additional tournament. We're looking at potentially using like a 10-gen Tetris cooperative mode as one of them, because that's really unique and something that you don't see.
Yeah.
But one thing that we found is that if you do something that's truly unique that you don't see, a lot of the times there's a reason that you don't see it places. So we might do cooperative and then have nobody play it because everybody's like, oh, that's crazy, I don't want to do that. So we're looking at that. We always try to balance it where we have some games that are new and different, and then some that are kind of expected and the same, so that people are comfortable with what's here.
Yeah, when you say tournament, everyone's going to expect there's going to be like an FPS tournament and stuff like that. So
Yeah. Well, and we try to keep ours a little bit more lighthearted. I mean, it's why the entry fees aren't crazy, and the rewards to them are always when you add in the other stuff that we give away, we basically give away more than the entry fees are, because the idea is more that you come and to have fun. And that's kind of what the whole show is about, is that you come to have fun. And if you come in with that attitude, you're going to come to a place where you're going to find it unique. You're going to find it totally different than any other show that you've ever been to, at least I think so. And you're going to walk out of here being like, whoa, this was really neat. I met new people. I got to hang out. I got to try some stuff that I would have never tried otherwise. And I loved the experience. And that's what so many people tell us, and that's honestly why we keep doing the show, because I was telling you guys a little bit of a story before, and I won't get into it again now since you already heard it, but we almost stopped doing the show at one point, because at that time it was Gary, who's the other co-founder, and I, and we had been spending like 70 or 80 hours a week on it, and we were like, this is crazy. What happened is that people started coming and saying, what can we do for this? And it started to become a social event for us. Gary and I have met people who we hang out with on a regular basis because of the show. Me, Gary, and another buddy of mine named Jim, we were all at someone's house this last week Saturday for a pinball party that we met because of this show. And that's really what it's all about, is the meeting people and stuff like that. If it wasn't for that, I guarantee that there wouldn't be a show. And so what I always tell first-time visitors is that walk around, introduce yourselves, and if you do that, you're going to find people that you are going to find out are really cool. And maybe they're into the same stuff as you, and you might make lifelong friends. Maybe you won't, that's okay. But you also might meet people that are into something completely different, and you can learn about what that is. All gaming is related. And all of it, even if you come for, let's say, pinball, and you're like, video games, whatever, but you walk in and you see how they've developed, you can see how pinball also developed, and vice versa. And tabletop games even, how video game design has influenced tabletop games, and how tabletop games influence the early role-playing games and stuff like that. It's all connected in a really unique way, and that's kind of what we try to show through the fans of those meetings.
Yeah. So there's obviously going to be plenty of rooms here with different things. What sort of panels, speakers, exhibitors should people expect when they come out?
Well, we're still working on a lot of the panels, so let me think if there's much that I can say about them yet. I don't think so. I'm actually not the guy that's in charge of confirming a lot of that stuff right now, so I don't feel perfectly good about saying this person's definitely going to be there when it wasn't me doing that. But I can tell you for rooms, one of the really unique things that we're going to have this year that's brand new is that the IGDA, which is the International Game Developers Association, their Wisconsin chapter is getting together. They've always done meetings at our show, and this year they said, we don't want to do a meeting. What we'd really like to do is have some of our companies show off brand new stuff that's in development and get people to have hands-on with it and try it out. And so there's, again, stuff that I don't feel comfortable saying this will definitely be there, because especially with the development cycle, you never know for sure that it'll be able to show up, because, God forbid it blows up the day before and you're like, okay, all that you get is a blue screen of death. I'm not showing that on. But they're going to fill up 3 full rooms with developers upstairs, brand new stuff, never before seen, totally new to us. We've never done anything like this before, and we're really excited to see that. We've also got a bunch of podcasts and stuff like that that kind of take over a room. So the room that we're actually in will be where the Pokemon podcast is, and so they do a lot of stuff with, obviously, Pokemon.
Yeah. They
work with Nintendo very closely, which visitors to this room will get to see exactly what we mean by that. Across the hall is a room called the Retroids Room. Retroids is another podcast network. They usually bring in Galloping Ghost Arcade with them. So there'll be somewhere to the tune of 25 video arcade machines set up over there like an arcade. They'll also be recording some live podcasts down there and stuff like that. One of my favorite exhibits is just down the hall here. It's where Star World's Arcade is. And Star World's Arcade is an arcade that has been around for probably 30 some odd years now. I don't remember exactly when they started. But they are one of the last true remaining 80s arcades in existence today. And they're always amazing because they'll bring 20, 30 games in, set them all up, set up the whole room to have lights and stuff like that. They're also where that Mario and Luigi party is. Okay. And they basically celebrate the history that there's seriously a handful of arcades that can claim that they've been open since the 80s that are still open. And they celebrate that with the people that are here. And other people get to see what they do. And I mean, if you ever get a chance to Caldwell, Illinois is where they are, and it's amazing. It's about an hour and a half from here. And they find it worth the travel of an hour and a half with all the games and stuff like that just to celebrate gaming, which is really what the show's all about.
Yeah, we used to go to the arcades around here, and all of them are closed. I mean, the mall used to have What's Take Time Out.
Aladdin's
Aladdin's Castle.
Yeah, okay, I was probably bumping elbows with you guys back then. Because, I actually, just last night, I ate at the Pizza Hut on 76th.
Yep.
And I was showing my son, if you look over there, that's where Spring Mall, what was it called, theater used to be, and right there, that white building, yeah, that's where Daddy used to play arcade games all the time.
Yeah, we see
And he was saying, pinball machines? And I was saying, yes, yep, those.
Yeah, they have some really great machines in there.
Yeah, he was asking me what machines I played in there. It was really a funny conversation. It's funny to have a 4-year-old right now, which is how old my son is, who kind of sort of has this knowledge of like video games, and he doesn't really play much in the way of regular games, but he knows arcade machines because I've got some of those, and so he sees those, and that's kind of, he thinks that everybody owns pinball machines.
Yes.
So it's unique having him do that and having him actually have this interest in that. We actually stayed here, our home had flooded, so we stayed at the hotel for 2 days, and we walked in the door, and my son goes, "We're at the Midwest Gaming Classic!" And I was like, no, that's in a month or two. Yeah, and he was like, "Dad, are we gonna go play pinball together later?" I was like, "No, Ben, they're not here." He's like, "Yes, they are." I'm like, "No, Ben, they're not." And then it was really funny because my wife said to him, "Ben, you realize that Dad's actually the guy that helps to organize the show. You, Dad and Gary do that together." And I said, "No, he's not, Mom. You would be in charge." I thought, "Thanks, Ben." So yeah, my son doesn't quite believe it, but even my son's excited to come back this coming year.
So you were talking about some of the atmospheres, like a museum and stuff, like older consoles and stuff like that. What kind of older consoles do you have that are going to be playable?
In our museum, everything's playable. That's one of the things that we did very early on. There were a lot of other shows in the country, and a lot of those shows, at the turn of the 21st century, a lot of those shows, what they did is that they would have like everything out on a table, and you could play a couple things, but the idea was to show you everything that ever existed, and that was cool to an extent. But it didn't get you the same sense of history, I think, that it does to walk up and try a Super Nintendo and then be like, okay, I really like that. That was pretty cool. Put that on the try Genesis, be like, oh, maybe I like that more. Maybe I didn't like that as much. And so that's something that we really tried doing with our museum. Every spot in our museum is playable. Mm-hmm. Everything that's there is playable. I don't think that there's one item that will be in our museum that's just a static display. If there is, it's usually as part of something else. Like, for instance, one of our longtime museum kind of gurus, one of the guys in charge of it, he brings a Atari patch set that goes with the Atari 2600 games that will be there. And so we select the games. It's not like you can just walk up and plug in whatever you just bought in the thing. Yeah,
that we don't need to.
Because that would be exactly. You don't
play this NES game.
Yeah, exactly. But so then it's a lot of it's pick up and play. A lot of it's popular games that people have heard of. One of the things that we have found really works well is that you don't, just because I might like Zombies Ate Your Neighbors for the Super Nintendo does not mean that most people in the general public will know what that game was. So we might think Zombies Ate My Neighbors is awesome, but then we'll dial it back and we'll go, but it would be better to show off the Super Nintendo using Mario Kart or using Mario World or something that people are more likely to go, ooh, I want to play this, so they can really trace the history through that. Now, if you want to find Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you'd go into one of the rooms like this where there's a podcast or something like that. because those people usually can tell people on what it is. Our museum display is more of a walk through and interact with history, more or less. And our displays are more of a, here's the people that absolutely love this, showing you exactly what niche they love. So the museum's less of a niche, if you will, and more of a broad thing, although it's, again, one of the cool things about the show is 100% put on by collectors. Nobody that's in the museum, unless if something changes, which it always could, nobody that's in the museum works for any video game companies. They love video games, so they're going to bring out 20 of their own consoles, 20 TVs, hook them up, and like a lot of people own 20 TVs because, oh, I helped with the Midwest Game Classic, and so it's pretty unique to see.
You're going to have import consoles too?
Yes.
Awesome. Because I remember reading in Nintendo Power, old issues at EGM, like, oh, it's on Famicom, but it might not come to the States.
Yep, we've got a whole area in the museum called the, I forgot exactly what they call it, something like Nipponichi area. Yeah, that's stupid, but it's something like that. And so they have that whole area where you can see some of the popular Japanese games that never made it over. And by having that as an area like that, it does give people the ability to walk up to those games and try them and see, okay, this is what this is really like.
So what's the most rare console or game you have at the convention that you look forward to playing or most proud of?
The one that I always find fascinating, and I will say that the general public almost never plays it, because, again, like I said, the stuff that you've heard of is the stuff that you are more likely to walk up to and play, but I always love the fact that we have a Super A-Can set up. That was a console that was released in Japan, or not in Japan, South Korea. And they believe that only about 5,000 to 10,000 of them were ever produced. And of those, they sold so poorly that they eventually scrapped them all for the chips on them. And supposedly of the few that were produced, even less are still in existence today. They only made like 10 games for it that they're really weird. Like the one that we usually have is a Sonic ripoff where you're like a dude with a baseball bat that runs really fast and like hits things. And it's just such...
we never got.
Yeah, it's just such a weird console, and to me, I think that it's fascinating because of that. And like, basically, if you look up, it used to be when we first started putting it out on display, there was literally no pages online that even mentioned the Super A-Can. And now there are pages, not because of us, but because other people have realized, hey, there's a Super A-Can system. What is this?
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating piece of history, and that again is kind of what we try to do, is have this whole scope. I also like that we showed the new one off. Mm-hmm. Which was a DVD chip that was in DVD players that could then play games. They only had 5 games that were released for it, but it's a unique thing that, again, failed, but could have been really cool had they been able to push it forward a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I know it was hard trying to keep consoles because we grew up in the age of trading in. Mm-hmm. So we started that, you had all these different companies, Funkoland back in the day. And I don't remember ever keeping a system, so I had to go out and rebuy systems.
Yeah.
I wish I still had my Sega CD because I love that thing.
See, and I was lucky because my dad started me off by saying the 2600 is every video game ever made. You never need to upgrade. And so when I eventually saved up and bought myself a Nintendo shortly before the Super Nintendo came out. It's actually almost exactly before Super Mario Bros. 3 came out, which I remember to this day.
Wizard.
Not just because of the Wizard. It's the first game and one of the maybe handful of games that I actually got on release. And it's the only game that I bought on release that I didn't regret. Because most of the time when I buy a game on release, it's like $20 cheaper a week later. I'm like, why did I do that? But that game was amazing, still is amazing. But anyway, so he had the 2600, I had the Nintendo, and then by that point it was like, well, I can't sell his 2600, so I'll keep that, I'll keep my Nintendo. And then by the time the Super Nintendo came out and I started wanting one, I was like, I still haven't played through most of all these Nintendo games that everybody else loved. So I held on to it to try to get those games from friends cheap. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of ended up being a collector. I don't have that much stuff. I mean, Nintendo, I have like 20 cartridges for. Super Nintendo, I got like 20 cartridges for. But I kept those 20 cartridges, and I still have a lot of attachment to those because like, I have an Earthbound with a totally ripped up label. It looks like it was a rental cartridge, and it looked like it was rented to someone who like dragged it along the ground behind their car as they went home or something. And you couldn't trade me a pristine copy of it for it because that is my Earthbound that I played as a kid. And so
I love that.
I really appreciate that.
That's how my Mike Tyson Punch-Out looks, and then I have like a pristine copy of Punch-Out with Mr. America or whatever his name is.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, you got both of them, but Punch-Out, Mike Tyson's way better.
Yeah.
I was looking on the website, so there's a lot of art and music related stuff going on too.
Yeah, so we've got this new thing called Artist Alley, and if you're an artist, you can display your art. We've got, my brother-in-law actually is an art professor for UW Milwaukee, and so he's curated exhibits for some of the local art galleries and also international art galleries. And I was talking with him because so many people do cool video game art, and I was like, look, we should do this at the show. And he was like, why have we not thought of this before? And so he's willing to do all the curating stuff. So it's curated by a professional that really knows his stuff. And those people that submit their art, him and another artist are going to be deciding their favorite pieces, and the piece that they decide is their favorite is going to get a PS4.
That's cool. So I am an artist. I went to Milwaukee to art design for college.
Okay, that's where he went too.
Yeah, I loved it. It's a great thing. So how would you submit something? Like, I got tons of comic book art and stuff that I've done.
Great question. Go to the website, look up Artist Alley, and you'll see there's two different options. One is when you buy your ticket, you can buy a $10 add-on to your ticket that will allow you to submit up to 5 pieces, and those 5 pieces will be considered then for the show. Otherwise, you can, for instance, if you are a kid or if you really just want to submit one piece, you can buy one piece individual entry for $10. You can buy up to 5. So as long as you're coming to the show, it makes sense to do the 2-day ticket, $10 entry for 5 pieces. But if you are not coming to the show, you could also submit them that way because you don't actually have to be present to it.
And is there any medium? It's not just going to be painting or sketching and video
Any medium.
installations or
If it's
sculpture?
video installation or sculpture or anything like that, we are, basically this is our first year that we've actually done this because like I said, it was this idea that was like, why haven't we thought of this before? We will be getting supplies that we need for them as long as they're accepted, which is really up to my brother-in-law and the other artist that's going to be working with him to curate this. But the idea is that as long as there is a means to do it, and as long as we're provided with the method to do it, we won't turn anything down. Now, if you say, I want to bring in my 40-ton sculpture of Bowser, I don't know if we've got a place for that. So that's the only type of limitations that we're going to have. If you can figure out a way to bring it in, like maybe you put it up in the parking lot, or like you want an ice sculpture and you're going to put that outside or whatever, we can totally look at doing that for you, but that's the only limitation that I can see.
I'm thinking real-life Katamari right away.
No, we did a full-size Mario and a work pipe for high school for a snow competition down in Milwaukee one year.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool, yeah. He was like jumping out of it and we just carved it. It was
That's
cool.
awesome. Very cool.
And then, yeah, there's going to be music.
Oh yeah, sorry. On Friday night, before the show even starts, we do a karaoke night up in the restaurant, bar, lounge area. And then on Saturday night, I just got these confirmed today, we've got a band called Beaker that will be performing at...
He knows who Beaker is.
You know who Beaker
No,
is?
It's there was a guy that we went to high school with, and his nickname was Beaker.
Oh,
But I'm sure this is not him.
okay, well, they're actually pretty funny because they dress in lab suits and stuff like that, but they're like a high-energy kind of punk band, and they're actually real big in the Milwaukee pinball scene. So we talked with them, and then right after that, we've got a band called the Zelda Routine, I believe it is. I'm probably screwing that up. It's Zelda something, and they do Zelda music. And then there's another band that we're talking to right now. And so those will be Saturday night after the show. Technically, you don't need a ticket to come here for them, but I don't know why you wouldn't be here for the day before that, because to skip out on all the gaming to see the game bands would be kind of weird. But they'll be in the restaurant and bar after all the presentations are over. We actually have a cosplay tournament too that'll be at 7:30. So if you are one of the people that get dressed up like your favorite character of any type, there's even a kids division. So I was saying that we should dress up my son as like Mario, and not tell the guys that it's my son, but be like, hey guys, that's the kid who should totally win.
So make sure they don't watch this.
Yeah,
because you just kind of gave it away.
Yeah, but no, it should be really cool. It's the first time that we've done something like that too. We had a group come up to us, and this is basically how everything starts at the show. We had a group come up to us that said, you have a lot of really awesome people walking around that are dressed up every year. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, let's do a tournament. And I was like, I don't have the time. And they were like, no, we mean we will do the tournament. I was like, okay, done. And so they have this great idea. They've got all these different plans that they're going to do for it. It should be really awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool how it sounds like everything just kind of picked up as you went along. People kind of just latched onto this and said, I want to be part of this. I've got these consoles, or let's do the like this art thing now. Let's do that. Let's do the
Yeah,
concert
well,
thing.
and that's Gary and I. Gary, the joke between us is that I'm the more content guy. I'm the guy that spends the money. Gary's the guy who like does the behind the scene work more of like he's the guy that puts together the vendors. He's the guy that figures out how ticket sales online work so we can actually. Gary's the guy that makes the money. Dan's the guy that spends the money. Is how the delineation basically is. But what's kind of cool that happened is that we sat down and basically said, you know, we're enablers. If it was just our show, we could fill up a room about this big. We'd have some broken pinball machines. We have a video game store that we also do, one that's online, one only go store. We'd have some video games for sale, some broken pinball machines, and that would be it. Everything else is from everybody else. And so our whole thing is that we figure out ways that we can make it affordable and fun for different groups to get involved and come to the hotel and show off whatever it is that their niche of gaming is, and that's ultimately our goal. And so it creates this really unique environment where basically everybody that's here is doing something that they love and they want to show it in the best way. And so like a lot of the times people will come up to me and they'll say like, what should I do? And I'll be like, what do you love? And they'll be like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do you love? Well, I collect Nintendo, but I'll do whatever you think is great. No, I want you to do Nintendo because you're going to talk about Nintendo way better than anything else. If I told you do Genesis, you're going to be like, oh, this is a Genesis. Play it if you want. But if you're going to show up and you've got your Nintendo collection out and you're like, hey, look at all these different cartridges, then someone asks you a question, you're going to talk about it. If they're into Nintendo too, they're going to find you as a, you know, really interesting person, and who knows, you might end up walking out of here and going like, man, you know what, I'm going to call up this guy, we're going to trade some games later on or whatever. And so it becomes this thing. One group every year has people that fly in from, well, they've had people from Norway, England, Australia, every year, same group, same people. And it's because they're part of an online community and they see the show as their one time to meet up with those people in real life. And that's kind of what this is all about. Don't come to the show expecting, oh, Nintendo's going to let me play whatever their next console is, and Microsoft is going to let me play their betas for Halo 5 or whatever, because that's really not going to happen.
No, you got to buy the anniversary for 2.
Yes, there you go. Exactly. But so what will happen at the show is that you're going to see the love that people have for gaming, and some of them are companies, and some of them are individuals, but it's a big love-in, if you will, of gaming, and so it creates a really unique weekend.
Yeah, so we've covered a lot of stuff here. Is there anything else you want to mention that we may have missed, or?
I don't think so. The only thing that I would say is that if people haven't pre-ordered their tickets yet and they want to come to the show, I encourage them to do that because every dollar that we get in pre-orders, we plow into the show that same year. So we're not in this to make tons of money. I mean, I would like to not lose money, but we're in this for all of the people that
You're in it
come.
to break even at least.
That would be nice.
You don't want to spend
because
money.
yes, I don't want to live in a box.
Correct.
But but like for this year, we're upgrading like we're putting up a giant temporary structure that keeps literally getting bigger every other day because we keep having more and more vendors sign up. We're adding new electrical for some of the games and stuff like that. And so the more money that we get in pre-orders that we know, yes, we've got this money, then the more that we can do to expand the show and make it even better that same year. So if you don't have tickets, go buy.
You want to give our listeners the website and everything?
Sure, MidwestGamingClassic.com is the website, and you can drop by there and pick up your tickets. Check on all the other pre-order things that are there. There's lots of stuff. I didn't even mention, there's a local collector, Tom, who has an open house that he does on the Friday of the show. So if you're in town early, you can go, it's about a mile down the block, play almost 400 different arcade machines for a donation that's 100% goes to a local charity. So you can check out all the different stuff that you can do there. There's, I'm sure, 100 things that I'm not remembering, and I think we went over time already. So I won't remember anything else.
Hey, that's fine. It sounds great. I can't wait to go. It'll actually be my first year attending after hearing about it. And I was like, now that it's in Brookfield, I have no excuse to not come to it. This is right down the street.
Yeah.
Thanks again for coming on, joining us here. We're Matt and Dan. Until next time, we're some kind of monkeys, and so are you.
Good game.